He's, and the middle's going to represent him. Oh, we got a couple of minutes.
You want the communication?
Doesn't matter. I don't know, I figured that. You know, I said when I shave, that's what I'm saying.
So who's going to do staff introductions then?
Who's doing staff introductions?
Hi, Chair Watkins, this is Keith Williams. Yeah, I'll be doing this now.
Okay.
There you go.
You know where the staff presentation seat is?
You get plenty to choose from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a specific
Just-
spot you want us to.
Yeah, whatever you like. Somebody can sit down here on the
Yeah.
end. Probably want to sit down
Can't
there.
see very well from here.
You might as well be here at the
Right
table.
there, it's got your name on it.
Are you gonna have a computer connection to there?
No,
Okay. Just because it's.
just a laser light show.
Oh, that sounds exciting.
We don't quite have a flag in here for the Pledge of Allegiance, do we?
No, but we need one.
Are you supposed to look to the north
Yes.
when you do that?
Well, I think we should look towards the camera. That's north.
Okay.
It would look funny if you're turning your back on.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll plug inside.
I've got several items, so I'm just gonna hang out there.
Figure it out.
Spent a lot of money Tuesday night.
That's what I heard.
Jesus. It's all got to come back. There's some of it that's not, in my
You know,
opinion,
on cameras.
right. No, we're looking at spending our ARPA money, over $9 million.
Okay, it is 3:00. So I will open the meeting for Thursday, February 24th, 2022 for the Shasta Regional Transportation Agency. If you're already connected by Zoom, you know all the instructions, and if you're not there, you're probably not going to figure out how to get there, so we will forego that. Keith, are you going to do a roll call? Item number 1. Or Amy?
I'll let Amy do that.
Good afternoon, board members and members of the public. We will start with the roll call. We have Chair Watkins,
Present.
Board Member Schrader,
I
Board
think she's en
Member,
route.
Board Member Mazzano,
Present.
Board Member Browning,
Present.
Board Member Modi,
He's here.
Here,
We see him on the screen.
Here.
Board Member,
is it not working?
no, you're,
Yeah, we hear you now.
We hear you now.
Okay,
Board Member Rickert,
Yes, I'm here.
and Board Member Commenti.
yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, we will have a pledge of allegiance. Everybody please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Keith, you're going to do staff introductions.
That's right, yeah. My name is Keith Williams, and I'm a senior transportation planner with SRTA, and I'm currently on rotation as the mid manager. This rotation gives me an excellent opportunity to test drive some management responsibilities I otherwise would not be afforded. So I want to express my gratitude to the board of directors for making this professional opportunity possible. So thank you very much. And other senior transportation planners with us today include Sean Tejan, Kathy Early, Dan Wayne, and Jennifer Palm. We're also joined by Associate Transportation Planner Michael Cooker, Administrative Associate Amy Lindsay, Chief Fiscal Officer Jessica Carlson, and also on the call is Executive Director Dan Little.
Okay, thank you very much. So we are on item 4, which is to select an SRTA chair and a vice chair.
Well, I came at the right time because I'd like to make a motion. Sorry for being late.
Catch your breath.
Yeah, I move approval of, I make a motion that we approve Baron Browning to be chair and Mark Mazzano to be vice chair.
And I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Kristen Schrader and seconded by Mary Rickard. So Amy, we'll make, this is pretty controversial. I think we should have a roll call vote.
Absolutely. So we will start with the new chair, Browning.
Yes.
Board member Commenti,
Yes.
board member Rickert,
Yes.
board member Modi,
Yes.
board member Mazzano,
Yes.
board member Schrader,
Yes?
and board member Watkins.
Well, I'm still chair at this point.
Now,
Yes.
Yes.
So I will pass the gavel here.
That's it.
Awesome.
It's all yours.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to item number 5, appoint a SRTA Fiscal Policy Committee and alternate to Executive Director Recruitment Committee.
I have another motion. I'd like to make a motion that we select Mary Rickert to be both on the Fiscal and Policy Committee and as alternate to the Executive Director Recruitment Committee. Oh, and I
I'll
need an
second that.
Do I need another, and do I need an alternate? And one alternate?
Right,
Do you need an alternate?
besides Mary.
So who's left?
Would that be somebody from the county since she's from the county?
Yeah, seems like it. Then it would be Joe.
Yeah.
Joe is the alternate? Joe?
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Second?
Yeah, so we have a first by Schrader, a second by Mazzano. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, sorry.
Have to do a roll.
Roll call, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm used to my own
You're the
meetings.
chair.
Guys, just to clarify, we have for fiscal and policy, we have Mary and Kristen and who?
Well, it's, right now it's, well, we already, I'm sorry, I should have been more clear. Thank you. The Fiscal Policy Committee is always made up of the chair, which is now Baron Browning.
Okay.
And so I made that assumption, so I should have been more clear. And then I'm nominating Mary to be the new member along with myself.
Great, thank you.
Oh, okay.
And then alternate for that, just to be clear, is Joe.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, and then we have Mary as the alternate for the Executive Director Recruiting Committee.
Was she, well, we're replacing Leonard on, I thought Leonard was on that committee and we're replacing him with Mary.
Mary, correct.
Okay, great,
Thank you for that clarification.
absolutely. Okay, so Chair Browning,
yes,
Chair Commenti,
Yes.
Board Member Rickert,
Yes.
Board Member Modi,
Thumbs
Board
up.
Member
Yes.
Lano,
Yes.
That was the thumbs up.
Board Member Schrader,
Yes.
and Board Member Watkins.
Yes.
Great, thank you, everybody.
okay, we'll move on to item number 6. This is public comment period. This time is set aside for citizens to address the board on consent agenda items or matters not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of the board. By law, the board cannot discuss or take action on matters not on the agenda, but may schedule an item for future meetings. Do we have anybody that has requested to speak?
It's my understanding that Mr. Dave Moore would like to address the board.
Mr. Moore?
Yes, thank you, board members. Hopefully you can hear me well. I'm here today to acknowledge Dan Little on his pending retirement. I do have a certificate, Dan. I won't try to hand it to you through the screen like we did before, but just wanted to acknowledge with the board and with everybody, Dan has served the transportation needs of Shasta County for quite some time here, in excess of 20 years. I don't know how many years it is exactly. We've had a great working relationship with Caltrans, and through Dan's leadership, we've seen some great improvements across the county, not only in the major corridors of Interstate 5, Highway 44, 299. You know, some of those we saw the success of the Buckhorn corridor and straighten out the Buckhorn corridor. We saw the success at the end of downtown. The additional improvements and needs along Interstate 5. The Stillwater interchange out there. But in addition to all those, the dedication to active transportation and providing mobility options for those out there has greatly improved our communities here in Shasta County. And I just appreciate Dan's efforts and dedications over the years to that. And Dan, I don't know how far behind you I'll be, but I do envy you on your pending retirement and hope you really enjoy it. And I greatly appreciate all of your efforts and your leadership and all of SRTA's efforts in those partnerships that we have developed over the years. So thank you, Dan.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just want to thank Dave. That was an unexpected surprise. So thank you, Dave, for making the time. We always value our partnerships with Caltrans, and this won't be my last meeting for the board's information. We'll at least have one more meeting to appoint my successor. So I'll have more to say about that and good things to say about Caltrans. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, it looks like we also have an additional public comment request from Mr. Ed Merrick.
Yes.
1 second. Promoting him now. And Ed, are you with us?
Ed, you're muted.
I'm sorry, and I'm also badly backlit, you'll see, but I hope you can hear me okay now.
Yes, Ed, we can hear you.
Yeah. Well, I hope you'll take the time to look at the short email and summary I sent you. I've been coming here for the last year pointing out that you made a fundamental error when you rejected the two proposals to use electric buses on the Salmon Runner line based on inaccurate analysis. Now, I just pointed out two different accounts of the same bus you said could not do 173 miles that has made 183-mile run from Seattle to Portland, a much more rigorous run than the nice Flat Valley run, usually only 70% of the pack. That's the Van Hole bus. And another one showing the same bus drove all the way from the Bay Area to Seattle and back and averaged 2 kilowatts per 2 miles, pardon me, 2 kilowatts per mile, which implies the exact range they specified and shows your analysis, your analyst made an error understating the range by a third. The reason I knew that your analysis was wrong a year ago is because there are literally thousands of sources out there showing efficiency of electric vehicles of different sizes, at different speeds. The problem is there are relatively few specifically showing buses on long range routes, because in most of the world where they have electric buses, they also have electric trains. And of course, if you had an electric train running to Sacramento, that would probably be the preferred method. So there just isn't a lot of this out here, particularly in terms of translation. But my point is, either of those buses, there's not so much on the alternate bus out there, but the right way to decide whether a bus meets your needs is to test it. You never did that. All indications are we could have this bus in operation today had you approved it 2 years ago. Please, I've asked you again, reopen the subject for analysis, determine whether it will work before you accurately, before you reject the possibility. I'll just end it there.
Thank you, Ed. All right, we'll move on to item number 7. All matters listed under consent calendar are considered to be routine and be acted upon with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless good cause is shown prior to the time the agency votes on the motion to approve. Do we have a motion? Or do we have someone that would like to talk about one of them?
I will make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All right, we have a first by Mazzano.
I think it's somebody's background.
Oh, second by Leonard. Can we have a roll
Yes.
call? Please?
Chair Browning,
Yes.
Board Member Commenti,
Yes.
Board Member Rickert,
Yes.
Board Member Modi. Yes. Board Member Mazzano,
Yes.
Board Member Schrader,
Yes.
and Board Member Watkins.
Yes.
Great, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to regular calendar, and we have the executive director's report, item number 8.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll be giving the executive director's report for today. And I just have a few updates to share with you as part of the report. First, SRTA staff will soon be applying for competitive grant funding to cover a majority of expenses for the Salmon Runner, the intercity bus service between Reading and Sacramento. So we'll keep our fingers crossed on that effort. Federal Transit Administration 5310 grant applications are due March 2nd. At this time, we're only aware of 2 applications from the region. Both are from Dignity Health Connected Living, one for the replacement of 2 to 3 vehicles and one to continue their volunteer driver program. And then also, SRTA is currently assisting the city of Reading and the Pitt River Tribe with the preparation of walking and bicycling infrastructure grant applications for the active transportation program and other grant programs. The active transportation program deadline is June 15th. So we will be very busy on those efforts in the near future. Finally, as you saw, Dan Little, our executive director, is with us today, and he would like to share a few words.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. That was much as nice as it is to take a break from running a meeting. I had to break in for one thing just to acknowledge Leonard Modi's time with us. This will be his last meeting. And Chair Browning, I just wanted to say a few words about that. And if other board members want to chime in afterwards, that would be great. And geez, I'm not even sure if Leonard's on the call anymore. We might have lost him.
You know, did you know that he has another meeting he's supposed to be chairing right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we might have lost it.
There he is.
Yes, okay.
All right, just in time, Leonard. Leonard, I just wanted to say a few words about you and what your leadership meant to SRTA. One of my favorite sayings about leadership is that leadership is doing the right thing, even if it comes at a tremendous personal cost. I think that really defines the work you've done, and especially the work for SRTA. So while we're grieving the loss of that leadership for the region, as I've had to reflect on all this, I actually feel better about it. I think about the long game. And not only are we grateful for your time with us, but in a strange way, I'm happy for you. I'm happy because you voted your conscience all the time, and that's what you were elected to do. I'm happy that you're hardwired for community service, and that you'll return and you'll move on to do other things, and you'll do that well. And then hopefully you'll have some personal time as well, which is a luxury you don't always get to have. And then also, I'm just happy that that whatever you do, it'll be in a more welcoming environment, more deserving of all your hard work. So we might have lost Leonard again, but we'll send him a recording of this if we need to. And I want to thank him for his 12 years of service on SRTA and thank him as he's been a tremendous personal mentor to me. I will certainly miss that. And I want to wish him the very best. And I'll turn it back.
Anybody else?
Yes, Baron, this is Mary. And I just want to say thank you to Leonard from the bottom of my heart. He's been a tremendous mentor to me for my time on the board. I have the utmost respect for his integrity, his character. And Shasta County has lost a great man who serves this community. And unfortunately, they don't realize that, but they're going to really suffer the losses that I don't know if they'll ever really understand how much he lobbied for this county at the state level, how much he cared about the citizens, and he was totally committed to doing the right thing. And you rarely see that in the political realm these days. So I made it through without crying. So I just want you to know I totally grieve this loss from the bottom of my heart. I will miss him every second of every day as long as I can continue to serve as a supervisor, because he's a great man.
Thank you, Mary.
Well, I could add that I've served with Leonard specifically on SRTA's board the last 7 years, and such a valued asset just for SRTA because of his historical perspective, being able to, on the committees I served on and as a board member, just that is a huge value, for all of us. I am going to try and stay away from the other conversation, which Mary covered really well, and so did Dan. But I wish you, Leonard, the very best, and wish it had a different outcome. And I thank you for your service to SRTA and to Shasta County.
And Chair, if I may, I just want to add on to what Mary said. Having been right there through what I would call a battle, Leonard always handled himself well. I really appreciate what he taught me, and I've said this to him, and I'll say it again. He literally has forgotten more about government than I will ever know. I really appreciate having served with him. I certainly wish it hadn't gone this way, but my recommendation to Leonard is, Leonard, just go enjoy yourself. Good God, you've earned it. Just go travel, do whatever you like. And I wish you all the best. Thank you, Chair.
Well, Leonard, thank you for all your years of service, not only to SRTA, but to Shasta County, and well before you got elected as a supervisor. So you have many years of great history, and don't ever forget that. Don't ever forget the good times. All right? Anybody else? Awesome. All right, we'll move on to.
Can I just, just one thing. Just I hope my wake is this good, but I just want to say thank you to everybody for the kind words. I have so much respect for all of you and the things that you have done for our community. It's been a pleasure to work with all of you, to learn from each of you. I look forward for all of you to continue the great work with SRTA and also in your home agency. So thanks for letting me just be part of your life for a few years. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Leonard.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on to item number 9. SRTA board members report on attendance at conferences, meetings reimbursed at SRTA expense. Anybody? Anybody? Nope. Okay, we will move on to item number 10. Review the fiscal year 2022-2023 annual transit needs assessment and preliminary recommendations. And this will be a public hearing.
Great. Thank you, Chair Browning and board members and colleagues, members of the public, partners. I'm here today to present on the draft of the fiscal year 2022-2023 annual transit needs assessment. Let me get my PowerPoint up. Is everyone seeing that okay?
Yes.
Thank you. So where this annual process comes about is from the Transportation Development Act. The Transportation Development Act is made up of two funding sources: the Local Transportation Fund, a quarter of 1 cent on local sales tax, and the State Transit Assistance from the sale of diesel fuels. The Transportation Development Act is a primary source of funding for public transit in our region and is supplemented by state and federal funding. This important part that I highlighted below is that under the Transportation Development Act, SRTA may use the local transportation funds for non-transit purposes if it can be demonstrated that there are no unmet transit needs in the region that are reasonable to meet. So that's what we're going to be going, what we kind of discussing today and going through. Document that the board has been provided and that is available by link at the end of the staff report contains these sections as well as several appendices. Let's see here. So part of what we do here is the transit demand, or sorry, a review of the transit providers. And I wanted to kind of go over that first. So if you can tell from the middle column, looking at fiscal year 2020, 2021, it was not a great year as expected from the pandemic and historically what's been happening in our region with ridership and transit costs. We had a fare box recovery of under the Reading Area Bus Authority's combined fixed route and demand response performance of 9.15. Under the Barney Express service, the fare box recovery was 4.7. These are the public transit services provided, and we need to be closer to about 18%. The rural transit has a goal of 10%, and we have a goal of around 18% for the mixture of in the Rabbit service area that is both rural and urban. The Shasta Connect Monday through Friday service that is run and operated under contract with the Dignity Health Connected Living. You can see here from the prior fiscal years is going down in cost of the TDA subsidy per trip. So we are in the 2020-21 year, it was down to 18.7. So part of this is we go out and we do a survey and reach out to the community about transit needs. We oftentimes don't have that much input. And this year we actually did have a good number, I felt, of responses until I got into those, and it was showed that people had used the transit needs assessment survey to address other concerns in their region that had nothing to do with public transportation, specifically from Shingletown. So there was a Shingletown, there's a neighborhood in Shingletown, or a community, sorry, what do I say, subdivision in Shingletown that would like a secondary access, and they bombarded this survey with those requests, and that does not have anything to do with transit. So those are not included here, but of those, some of those individuals that did respond in the Shingletown area, they did ask for transit service as well. So we did go ahead and include those, and what you see is whether it's an unmet need. Yes, we do know that it's an unmet need, but is it reasonable to meet? And that for now is no, because of the way that the RABA system is performing now. We could look at providing service to this area through the Shasta Connect service, or currently riders could contact Dignity Health Connected Living as the CTSA and ask for service out there. We received a request for the continuation of the Whiskeytown Beach Bus, and we're recommending that continue for this summer from Memorial Day to Labor Day weekend. The 2 weekends, I should say, holiday weekends through those. We regularly have requests for extended service hours, more frequent service, and extended service areas. For example, Shingletown service. We've tried in the past a Cottonwood service and other things, but we're not recommending any increase of service at this time because of the performance right now of the Reading Area Bus Authority, and that they will be going through a short range transit plan that should look to address some of these things. We also received appreciation, I would say, and continuation of the Sunday service that is offered through Shasta Connect. So in addition to what we received through the survey, we also have been considering ways to, with the trend of increased costs, decreasing ridership, and the pandemic, we're looking at providing services to the public in different methods or to look at alternatives. So we want to continue the on-demand Sunday service offered through Shasta Connect. We want to look at the potential. This is over the coming year. We want to look at the potential of the expanded CTSA service, including the possible operations on Saturdays. Look at the on-demand service as an alternative to fixed route. That is something that possibly the Reading Area Bus Authority could look into in their short range transit plan, and we will look into ourselves. Look at right now on the 299 corridor, Bernie Express is running along with the Modoc stage, and just recently Shasta Connect is serving the Intermountain area between, I'm going to just say Bernie and Fall River, with communities in between. So since there are several services running around around possibly at the same times, we want to look at consolidating and coordinating those efforts. Similarly, with the idea of coordinating efforts between rapid demand response, which is also known as complementary paratransit, and the Shasta Connect service, to make certain that we're reducing overlaps. One thing that came out of SRTA's long range transit plan was the possibility of a low income strategy, since we're not really getting a fare box recovery right now that is required under TDA. Why are we charging? What if we offered free fares? What would that do to the system, and how could we? What benefits could our public transit system receive from trying a free fare program? And lastly, we want to look at reestablishing or in some way bringing back airport Knighton Road service. We've got the VA clinic and home on Knighton Road, increased service at the airport, as you might have heard recently about the flight to Denver, and I believe the potential for the pilot training to come back. So right now, the draft of the transit needs assessment is out for public review for 30 days. Today, at this board meeting, we need to hold a public hearing on the unmet transit needs findings. Subsequent to that, I need to receive direction on what the board feels about the recommendations that have been made, as well as any additional comments that we could receive during the 30-day comment period. We will be going to the Social Services Transportation Advisory Council to receive their recommendations. So they will present to them on March 16th, and they will provide a recommendation that will become part of Appendix 9 of the Transit Needs Assessment. And then lastly, likely at the April 28th meeting, at Board of Directors meeting, we will bring forward the draft final 2022-23 Transit Needs Assessment for board approval, along with the Transportation Development Act budget and unmet transit needs recommendations. So for today, I just want to remind Chair that we need to hold a public hearing on the unmet transit needs findings, and then the last two items are for the board to provide direction to staff.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome.
All right, we will open up the public hearing. Is there anybody on that is called in and asked to speak?
Nobody at this time.
And I do not show anyone either.
All right, we'll close the public hearing. And now we can all chat. I have a couple comments and maybe some questions. And maybe Jennifer can answer them or get back to us. So obviously, my first question is, who pays the difference between the fare box ratio not meeting it at this time? Do we cover that?
Who pays it? Yes. Yes, it's paid through, public transit
So if we
funding.
don't meet the 18% for our area, then we cover the difference between the 4.8 and 18 at this time, or whatever the number is.
Yes, we receive the different agencies, the county for Bernie Express and the Reading Area Bus Authority for the rest of for that service, for the more urban service. They have federal and state grants that can fill that gap.
And for last year, what was our portion? What did it cost us?
I'll have to let me look that up. But
I thought last year we got CARES money that helped cover some of the shortfall because of the pandemic. I thought we got extra money from the federal government.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, that helped defray some of
those.
Yeah.
I'm just not certain of which operating year they were using that in, but it is the CARES funding that came down from the federal government for pandemic response did not require a local match. So it could be that the federal funding came in for that. In other words, I'll have to get back to you.
Robert meeting on
that
the
difference.
28th. I can get back to you.
Okay, perfect. And then my next question is that I really like the on-demand portion to definitely look at that. What I guess my question would be is based on our Sunday on demand, if they would have paid, because if it wouldn't have been free and they would have paid, what would have been the fare box ratio percentage on Sunday, right? Using the on-demand versus, the daily bus routes, I guess is where I'm going. And I know that's kind of apples to oranges to a lot of degree, but I guess my point I'm getting to is we come up with a number that gets us close where we say, if we went on demand, we'd be a lot better off to try to drive that train.
Yeah, I think I can come back to that and answer that question in the April staff report.
Awesome. Thank you.
Jennifer?
That's a good question. Oh, go ahead, Mary.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I don't want Baron to miss his compliment. Jennifer.
We get one?
Okay. So Jennifer had a couple questions and then one comment. I think it's a great idea to consolidate the Bernie Express and the Modoc Sage stage. I see, I go up and down 299 all the time, and it seems like there's I see the Bernie Express frequently and I see the Modoc Stage, and it just seems like they're basically running the same route, and it would make sense to consolidate those two if possible. That would be my opinion. And then how much usage has the Shasta Connect had within the Bernie, Castle and Fall River Mills area? Do you have any feedback on that yet?
I'm going to bring Sean up in here because he is the project manager for that.
Okay, Sean.
Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, Mary, on that question, the Intermountain Area Service for Shasta Connect for weekdays, it operates Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 3:30. They've had about 100 trips in the last month. That has mostly been a soft opening in terms of the service for folks that are already aware of or needing transportation, and a few folks that Dignity Health Connected Living had reached out to. We just now got our final flyers available to be able to share with the community. About 250 flyers have been given to Dignity Health to distribute up there. We'll also be doing some social media outreach as well as a plan to reach out to Intermountain News to do a posting of that flyer so it gets out to more people. So hopefully we'll see that pick up over time over the next few months and be able to see how that takes place.
Is that okay if I put it in my column? I've mentioned it before, but I will put it in again if that's okay, because I've seen a little bit of information about it, but I haven't seen a lot. And so I think that the real key up in the Intermountain area is to basically put information on the post office doors. You take it to the door, the door to the post office, and that's how most people get their information in the Intermountain area.
Yeah, Dignity Health has talked with the post offices in the different communities, as well as various other businesses, other places that they frequent a lot. And so they'll be putting out quite a few flyers. I've been working on trying to get you an email with some information as well as a copy of that flyer, so that will you can share that to anyone you have contacts with and in your column that you have as well. And that flyer has some summary basic info for everyone.
And if you want me to put some up, just ask me. I hate to see somebody make a special trip to the Intermountain area, so I'll be happy to put them up for you.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I will reach out to you after this meeting on that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, Baron, if I may, I'll try to answer your question briefly about the fare box item with Shasta Connect. That is something we would have to look into to see what exactly that would be. One of the things that would factor in that is we need to compare the full cost of the Shasta Connect service, and then also an assumption for a fare. So Brava and Dignity Health have had different fares. Fares are anywhere from $1.50 to as much as $5 between the two services. So part of that analysis would have to look at and say, if we were to charge a fare, what fare would help us based upon existing costs or estimated future costs, get us to that fare box ratio that we are comfortable with as a region. So that'd be some analysis that we do over time to figure out. And that would be one of those things that we would be coming back to you in the future to discuss about, do we make this a permanent service? When we run out of LC TOP, the low carbon transit operations program funding that's available, how do we move forward with that? Do we can keep it free and we figure out a different method for funding it? There's a lot of questions that we'll need to come back to you in the future on and discuss how that happens, as well as analysis that says, if we go away from a free service to charging a fare, how might that impact ridership? You know, I would assume there may be some certain percentage of riders that may not ride as frequently as maybe they have because it's been free. But it also may increase opportunity for others that, you know, with the demand that's available there. So a lot of things that we would weigh.
So, I mean, obviously fares are dropping across, you know, not only our state, but the nation, right? Fare box ratios, people aren't doing it as much. Is anybody else doing something very similar to what we're talking about right here, where we're doing an on-demand? And if so, how's it operating and what does their ratio look like? Because I mean, at the end of the day, if we can't go back to the state and say, hey, you're giving us this amount of money, if you continue to give us this amount of money, and we made this free service, right, for on-demand, you're not losing any more and we're not losing whatever we're losing, 2 million a year, whatever the number is. I mean, there's got to be, even if it's a pilot project, but I can't imagine that someone's not already doing this.
No, I mean, there are quite a few different other transit agencies that are doing on-demand style services, whether it's West Sacramento is doing something, SRTA, besides all the other services they have, a lot of very urbanized areas. Not as many smaller urban regions, rural regions as ours that I'm aware of. However, it's been a little while since I've actually looked to see what other regions have done. So I think one of the things we'd want to do is kind of go see and compare what other smaller regions are doing, and if they're doing the same thing of being proactive about how they're funding it or changing their methodology. I am aware of, like in Texas, there is a transit service that essentially they changed their whole system and went completely on demand, everything across the board that they did. But it's a slight mid-sized area. So I think a lot of folks are trying to test, and we've been down this road as communities now with the technology being available for the last 2, 3, 4 years, that regions are starting to be able to say, okay, how does this work? How does it not? And what can they do with it moving down the road as, you know, maybe a paradigm shift in how we serve our communities.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not that I'm trying to get rid of Raba.
No, but you know, I was really impressed with the presentation from the mayor of West Sacramento when I went to a CalCog presentation. And as it turns out, the entire town of West Sacramento is the exact same footprint that we started our on-demand, Shasta Connect, about 14 square miles, and But, and I, and I've passed that information on to Chuck. Chuck has reached out to them and had some conversations back and forth. And I believe that's going to be in our short range plan that's going to be coming back to the rubber board to be approved to do, to hire a consultant to do that short range plan. It's definitely should be on the table, looking at what those alternatives are, because now more people will have been doing it. Sean, talked about going back and seeing what other people are doing. What did happen to that?
Well, we're just talking about fare box ratio. We haven't even dealt with the fact that you go to a smaller van, the cost is less, the gas is less than, or whatever, than the bus. And so we haven't even talked about even that piece of the puzzle. We're just talking about fare box ratio and the loss just with that, not the gain that we gain by going with a van versus a, big old bus that we travel around in now. So.
It's definitely we definitely should be studying it.
Yeah.
Chair Browning, I just wanted to say Chuck Auckland is on the call here too, and I think he'd like to speak. So
good.
Cool.
And bringing him up.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, how you doing, Chair Browning? I appreciate the opportunity here. I just wanted to kind of weigh in on, I guess, your question a little bit, give you a little bit of information that might help anyway. You'd asked a question about the fare box and what happens when we don't meet what our projections are. And just so you're aware, the way that the system is funded right now and the way that we deal with it is we come with a expected budget of what we think the money is going to be for the following year, right? So we have FTA money that comes in, the 5307, and we did, as Member Schrader had mentioned, we got additional money, federal money for the system. So we take, then that equated about $2.5 million. The total system to operate is about $5.5 million. We look at the fare box that we expect to get, and we take an estimate of what that might be. It's been as much as $1 million, but in the last year or two, it's been about $500,600, somewhere around that area. And then the rest of whatever it needs to be funded is made up of the TDA dollars. And that's what we do the request with the annual transit needs assessment and the TDA budget. We request, hey, we need to fill that gap. So what happens in the following year, so then we run the system for that year. And what happens in the following year is we say, okay, where did we land? How much did the federal money that we had proposed, was it as much as we thought? How much fare revenue did we get in? And then how much TDA did we actually use? And so that gets then trued up in the end. So if we expected to get $800,000 in fare revenue, we only got 500, then that $300,000 needs to be made up in the TDA money, and that will get translated into the next year. Hey, we need this 300,000 to make up for the previous year. So each year they do a true up. So that's kind of how that gets funded. Robin needs to operate, expends the money they expend, get the fare box that we get in, and then we true up at the end of the year as we go into the next following year. So to your point, yes, the agencies pay that through TDA, the shortfall in whatever fare revenue.
Thank you.
And then to the on-demand service, that is something that we will be looking into as we get into the short range transit plan, which will be starting this year. It's something we'd like to do. It's I think a lot of it depends too on how the state is going to regulate TDA dollars. Right now we're supposed to meet certain fare box recovery ratios, whether it's 10% rural, 20% urban, and then SRTA requires that we meet a 15%. And so for the last 2 years, I believe, and then going for the next year and a half, the state has relaxed those rules. And even before the pandemic, they talked about relaxing those rules. And so if we don't meet that fare box prior, we would have a penalty. It's a 3-year process, actually. You have the year you don't make it, then you go into the year that you hope to make it the next year. And if you don't, then you go into this penalty year and sort of actually can hold money back and translate in the system. And we have, as a board, RABA hasn't taken action to raise those fares since 2006. And just just some perspective, and one of the reasons is it really is it's a social service. So we talk about sort of reduced fares for lower income people. Well, everybody that rides that system is lower income. And in fact, not only is it subsidized in the fare box itself, but a lot of the fare is paid for by other organizations, whether it's through charities or through actually county, the Cal Smart or other places that donate money, veterans, those types of things that pay for reduced fare. Our average fare is only about $1 a ride, even though our base fare is $1.50, because senior and disabled is half that, it's only 75 cents. And then, like I said, much of the other services come from other agencies as well. So it's a heavily subsidized service, and if the state does relax some of those rules, then the board can decide to fund whatever they want, because they won't have these requirements to meet these ratios.
Thank you.
Chair Browning, it seems that when Jen works on this report for the final one, she ought to really be looking at on demand, if there's places where it should be looked at to replace the fixed route, especially for certain hours of the day and days of the week. And I don't know how we correlate the Sunday service with what's going on, because right now we have 2 years we're giving it away for free. So I don't think that we get a fair assessment at all until we start charging for the Sunday service. And I would ask Kristen, what were you saying West Sacramento did? They went to mostly demand?
Chuck, do you remember, I thought that they were doing a pilot project for the whole city. I lost track, but yeah, basically it was for the whole city.
Can you hear me again?
Yes.
Yeah. So, they're a little different situation, obviously, because they're more of a bedroom community to Sacramento. So it's a little different, right? We have the full gamut here, but yeah, they did. Their model was to go into actual neighborhoods and then bring people out to service lines. So for example, if you equate that to us, it would be taking either a neighborhood in Reading or say even just a Shasta Lake or an Anderson, running that type of service model there, and then bringing them into the main service line for the transit system that hopefully has better, what we call headways, not just an hour, maybe you can get down to half hour or 15 minutes where you're running a more efficient system. But the big problem that we have, and it's something that I've talked to our council a lot about it, being a public works director, is our service area is huge. And that equates to all of our infrastructure, whether it's roads, water lines, police beats, all those types of things. So we're trying to serve a huge, not very dense area, and it's just not very efficient. And so one of the ideas that we're wanting to explore with this on-demand transit is to say, okay, we've got the core system of routes that maybe we can do very efficient on, but maybe there's like a south of, Victor area, south of Hartnell, Galaxy area, that maybe you concentrate that area on a on-demand type system where we're not running it every single hour. And maybe we can be efficient with some of those trips, bring them into one of our transit centers or something like that, where they can get back on the main service. And so that's a model that we'll be looking at. It's difficult on that, because if you sort of equate that to our paratransit system, you're only getting 2.5 to 3 rides per hour, whereas our fixed route system, you're getting 10, 12, 15 rides per hour. And so for every hour of service or dollar of service you're transporting more people. And so you've got to kind of balance those two. It's not necessarily that efficient, because our demand response is actually more expensive in terms of a fare box ratio. It gets less because you're running fewer people in that same hour of service. And to Chair Browning's point about the buses and vans, we get that question quite a bit. And quite frankly, the biggest cost is not the fuel. It's actually a relatively small part of the cost. It's the labor. It's the driver who's driving that vehicle around. It is more expensive to buy those vehicles, and certainly, somewhat more expensive to maintain them, but the bulk of your cost is in the labor, and that's what continues to rise while we have the same level of service. So that cost per hour continues to go up, because even if our other expenses stay the same, whether it's our facilities or our fuel or insurance, landscaping, if we keep all those constant, the labor costs continue to go up because we have a contracted service. And so if you're running the same amount of hours and your costs are going up, that cost per hour is going to necessarily go up. If that makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
Chair Browning, I think that there's some good information that we're hearing there, and I really think that Jen ought to look at some other alternatives, what other areas have done, and maybe include a section in a report that says what has West Sacramento done and what have other communities done that have worked and improved their system. So maybe you could expand that a little bit for the next meeting, Jen.
I'll look into that. I just want to make certain that we keep our, that we're not doing too many reports or too much, because the Reading Area Bus Authority is doing a short range transit plan and looks to, they are going to be looking into this same information. And, I think that that's going to be a better spot to do it. But I'll look to see what we can put in, for the April meeting, or before the public review of this is finished, what sections we could add to it. I appreciate that comment.
Chair, you talked, this was before my time, so you'll have to educate me. You talked about the service that we've been giving for free for 2 years.
Yeah, the on-demand Sunday.
Right, the Sunday on demand. I talked to Chuck about that. And if we go to a pay-as-you-go plan, that could adversely affect that.
Oh, it will. It will. I'm just saying it's not a real study yet because we're doing it for free.
Right.
Valid point.
Yeah.
Valid point.
Yeah, okay. And then I understood you. Great, thank you.
Yeah, if I may, I'll just add into that. The Sunday on demand service is meant to address a couple of things. One was the request for, transit on Sundays, which has not been provided, previously before. And one of the challenges we had was, how much demand was there even for that? Because in a lot of regions, what they find that do operate 24/7 with fixed route and complimentary paratransit and other services, whether it's a large area or smaller, is they find that typically on a Saturday, their actual ridership may be, 3/4 to half of what their normal weekday is. And then a Sunday ridership may be half of their Saturday. And so they pare down those services depending on the days of the week and the demand that's available. So part of the goal here was to try a different service model to see how that could work for the region, as well as determine the level of demand. So yes, in one respect, with a free fare, we don't know how that will impact folks that use it. And, that would be part of our effort too, to reach out to the communities as we consider, if the board considers making that a regular service that is committed to continue to provide, that'll be part of the analysis to get input from the community and the riders that says we're considering different fares. This is how we think it might impact you. What fares would still encourage you to ride it more frequently or less frequently, or how might it impact your travel? I would also add, one of the things we learned in working with Dignity Health is that by having a free fare, we also have other issues that you have, such as very late cancellations and other things where there's that we have to keep track of riders that affect service and efficiency, such that if there were, say, a fee penalty for too many late cancellations to discourage that, then it might actually allow us to also be more efficient to allow us to meet the demand of more folks who are not able to get a ride because the vehicles are already busy with the already booked riders that have already put in their trip requests. So there's also that side of it, that we might actually be able to serve more people than we are today as well, depending on how that plays in. There's a lot of factors that go into it. And I think that'd be something that we would be studying down the road over the next year or two, and provide that information back and look into it to see how the region wants to move forward in the future.
Thank you.
So if there's nothing else, I just want to, so we still, I've got some direction on ideas for the unmet transit needs recommendations that were presented. And then I will be likely, we will need to be responding to any additional public comments in the, while this draft document is out. And if the board has any directions there.
Thank you.
Number 11.
All right, we're moving on to number 11. Review draft work elements and planning budget for the fiscal year 2022-23 and overall work program.
Chair Branning, would it be okay if I just present from here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Looks like that's the only spot that's covered by the camera. So the overall work program, as everyone knows, is our work program and budget. And each year we present it in 3 phases to the board and to the public and to our partners. We do regional planning priorities in December. Today we go over draft work elements and draft budgets for review and comment. And then in April, we bring the final and full overall work program for adoption. So every year, the OWP includes something routine, meaning core responsibilities like the regional transportation plan, transportation improvement programs, public outreach, those things that we're required to do. It also includes something familiar. Those would be projects that we're currently doing, but we're not going to complete this fiscal year, so we're going to roll them over into next year. And then it also includes usually something new. Usually these are grant-funded projects that we're adding to the work program that we've not had before. Usually the new is what everyone's interested in. So I'm just going to quickly mention what those are. And of course, I can answer any questions that folks have with other work elements as well. There are 3 new work elements. One is a partnership with the Pit River Tribe. We're not involved financially in this, but as a administrative courtesy for the tribe, we're including that in our work program just to administer the grant funds that they had. So we're going to be providing a minor amount of technical assistance as needed for them for this project, and we'll bill that to indirect or other work elements where it fits or where it's appropriate. And then we also, every year we receive what's called Senate Bill 1 or SB 1 formula planning funds. We usually get roughly $160,000 a year that are supposed to be spent for activities that help in the development or implementation of our sustainable community strategy. So basically activities that help reduce vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions as a result of that. There's 2 projects that we've identified for 2 of these fiscal year allocations of SB1 formula funds. One is some technical assistance that we would provide to our local agency partners to develop capital grant competitive projects for Highway 273. So we have a large planning joint plan that's going on to study that entire corridor with Caltrans District 2 as we identify high priority projects. For that, then we'll be able to use these funds to hire consultants to really flesh out those high priority projects and get them ready to submit capital grant applications. The other one is a disadvantaged communities investment strategy. This is something that we believe would be very beneficial when we're seeking funds, as this is a priority for us regionally as well, but especially so with our state funding agencies. They want to know how state resources are specifically benefiting disadvantaged communities. And so we need to have a good idea of what their needs are and have some type of plan for how we're going to address those needs in ways that are specific to those individual neighborhoods, or at least areas of town. So this is, as I mentioned, this is the opportunity to review and comment on the draft. It's open to obviously the board and the partner agencies and to the public. We're asking that all comments and suggestions to be provided to us no later than April 12th. So that we can consider those and incorporate those as appropriate into the final overall work program at the April meeting. That's it for this agenda item, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have anybody that's asked to speak on this subject?
Not at this time.
Awesome, thank you.
None.
Any questions from anybody? No?
Nope.
I don't think so.
Okay, there's no action required. It's just a review and comment. So if you're satisfied, then we're good.
That was an easy one for you.
Yep.
We'll tee you up the next time. You're welcome. All right, we're going to move on to item number 12, approve updates to SRTA's human resource policies.
Hey, good afternoon, Chair Browning, members of the board, and members of the public. This item is related to an item from the December board meeting when SRTA staff reported on recruitment challenges. The current recruitment is into its 6th month, and despite 4 job offers, we have not been successful in hiring a new transportation planner. As discussed at the last meeting, current human resources policies limit the executive director to hiring new staff at the lowest 3 steps from approved salary ranges on SRTA's compensation plan. At that meeting, the board of directors recommended changing this policy to allow the executive director to hire at any step from the approved salary ranges, so the agency may act quickly on opportunities in a dynamic labor market. Staff is recommending this policy change today, along with a couple other changes. One other change staff is recommending would allow the executive director to hire qualified individuals in new positions for the agency, as long as these positions are compensated from salary ranges already approved by the board. This would help us to expediently meet agency needs if it were determined that we needed a planning tech or an engineer or other such position in the future. That said, we are limiting this recommendation to the creation of positions compensated from approved salary ranges equal to or lower than the senior transportation planner level. Consequently, if the executive director wanted to create a position compensated greater than the salary range approved for the senior transportation planner level, this would require board approval. Finally, staff is recommending updating policies to allow the executive director to make minor updates and corrections that are needed from time to time. For example, renaming, say, probation to introduction period, or updating the names of health insurance plans, or other small updates. At their meeting on February 14th, the Fiscal and Policy Committee agreed with the staff recommendation, which again is to update certain policies to authorize the executive director to 1, hire employees at any step from the agency's compensation plan, 2, create new class specifications compensated at or below the senior transportation planner level, and 3, to make minor non-substantive updates and corrections. And that is my report. Do you have any questions?
I think, Mayor Browning, that the Fiscal and Policy Committee came up with this, and all the changes are outlined as attachment A. So I move acceptance of the changes that we have outlined in attachment A.
I'll second.
1 second. Did anybody call in to speak about this? Sorry.
No.
Awesome, thank you. All right.
Expedient.
Huh?
We're being expedient.
All right, we have a first by Watkins, a second by Schrader. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Chair Browning,
Yes.
Board Member Commenti,
Yes.
Board Member Rickert,
Yes.
Board Member Modi,
Yes.
Board Member Mazzano,
Yes.
Board Member Schrader,
Yes.
and Board Member Watkins.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll move on to item number 14, designated current executive director as executive director retired annuitant.
Good afternoon, Chair and Board. This is my report. When Dan Little, our current executive director, retires on April 6th, we recommend that we designate him as a retired annuitant, which is a special CalPERS classification so that he can receive his retirement benefits from CalPERS and continue on as an interim executive director until we fill the position, or June 30th, whichever comes first. So in this case, he will only receive hourly wage and his retired medical. And this allows him to do that under the CalPERS retirement policies. So essentially that's pretty straightforward. So this is just to designate him into that classification, immediately preceding his retirement on April 6th.
I just have a question. So we have to ask for an exemption?
Negative.
You
So
sure?
That's correct, yes.
Because I thought there had to be a separation for 6 months.
Correct. So with COVID, they've recently made a waiver to those type of holdings, like the 180 days, et cetera. So he is fully eligible.
Not that I was trying to get rid of you, Dan, for 6 months. I was just
I
asking.
think we've done that at the city level too, haven't we, Kristen? Yeah, we've done that at the
Use
city.
the exemption of the
Yeah,
COVID.
we're using the exemption under the COVID.
What happens if we don't approve it?
So you are, as recommended, an alternative action would be to take no action, which in that case, we would hope.
can't
that we
retire.
Could.
Hold on, Dan. You're not retiring.
Unfortunately, that's not the alternative. The alternative would be that he retires and we hopefully have a seated executive director prior to April 6th. Which our recruitment is well on the way. So as Dan mentioned before, we hope to present a candidate by the next board meeting.
So if we don't approve this, if we want to get Dan's advice or input, we'd have to beg him to do it. With this, we can pay him to do it.
Dan is willing to continue his employment with SRTA as a retired annuitant. That is the terms. You guys made me do it.
Or you can come in as a consultant and you can pay him a huge fee.
Yeah, good luck. Yes, so in this case, this action would save SRTA money in costs.
You should have started with that.
Oh, sorry, excuse me. It is in the report.
I move approval.
I will second. That's.
We got a first by Rader, a second by Mazzano. We have roll call, please.
Yes. Chair Browning,
Yes.
Board Member Commenti,
Yes.
Board Member Rickert,
Yes.
Board Member Modi,
Yes.
Board Member Mazzano,
Yes.
Board Member Schrader,
Yes.
and Board Member Watkins.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Just for future, you should not stick Watkins Browning together. We're gonna get in trouble.
Great.
I like it though. All right. Item number 15, approve regional surface transportation program, RSTP policy update.
Me again. So for Member Watkins, we'll start with the fiscal impact. There's no fiscal impact to this action. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, good. So what we're doing is we're just revising the RSTP policies to include a recommended term of RSTP funds whereby if a project that has previously been approved for funding through the exchange program is coming to its expiration, which is 3 years, then we can discuss reallocating those funds to maybe another project that is more current. Right now, the policy does not have specific language that allows for that.
Oh, the move of the money. Gotcha.
So, and then there was other very more minor administrative amendments there. So we're just allowing, also authorizing the executive director to make those minor administrative changes.
Have we come up against this in the past where you?
I'm sorry. You mean historically, has anything expired? No, not expired and been lost, not yet, but we are just preemptively striking to make sure we accommodate for, and if that were to happen in the future.
But I think what you're really saying is there have been times when the city of Shasta Lake and Anderson and Reading has not fulfilled their grant application or the requirements, and it's got right down to the deadline. And this gives you a chance to review it 6 months in advance.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
So there has not been any expired funds, but this would also allow us to keep a close eye and make sure everybody's invoicing appropriately.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and especially in today's age when we can't get some stuff and it's delayed on a ship or a boat or it's not being made. In all the city cases, that's going on regularly. So I think it's a good preemptive measure.
So I would just need approval of that policy update and approval for the executive director to make minor administrative.
Let's make that motion.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a first by Mazzano, a second by Watkins. May I have roll call, please?
Chair Browning,
Yes.
Board Member Commenti,
Uh-oh. I think we lost him.
Looks like he's not on the call. Looks like he fell off.
okay, Board Member Rickert,
Yes,
Board Member Modi,
Yes.
Board Member Mazzano,
Yes,
Board Member Schrader,
Yes,
and Board Member Watkins.
Yes.
Great, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
motion carries.
All right, we'll move on to item number 16, receive a presentation on Fix 5 Cascade Gateway.
Thank you, Chair Browning and board members. Yeah. So Eric Orr from Caltrans District 2 and myself, we're going to provide an update on the Fix 5 Cascade Gateway project. And I'm going to be discussing briefly the need for the project. And Eric's going to be talking about some of the major elements of the project that are proposed. We're doing this now because the project and the way that we're presenting it have evolved quite a bit in the last couple of years. And so we want to, what we want to do is we want to better respond to the unique operational challenges that we're experiencing right now in the I-5 corridor. And we also want to better align the project the best we can with state and federal funding priorities. So again, the scope of the project has evolved a little bit, and also the way that we're presenting it to our potential funding agencies. We'll be presenting the project to you in the same way that.
and this is Mary Rickert, and Joe Committee just texted me and said he got kicked out of the meeting and he's going to try and rejoin. So he asked me to provide that information to everybody.
Would you like us to wait at all or just keep? So we'll be presenting the project as we would to you, as we would to one of our prospective state and federal funding partners. So you could kind of evaluate for yourselves like what the project need is and if it's something that you would consider funding. It can be a little tricky because the primary need for this project, it's not like a traditional project. The need for this project is kind of an on and off, like a light switch. Based on the conditions that we're experiencing out there. And the number and duration of these events is very erratic. It's not something that just happens on a regular basis. And the solution to these issues, it needs to be different things at different times based on whatever the operating conditions are or the travel demand is on the corridor. So it's a little bit difficult project to present in terms of the scope and its benefits compared to a traditional project where you need a capacity increasing project. So there's congestion, so you add lanes, and it's a simple argument. This is a little bit more finessed. So with that said, as everyone knows, the I-5 corridor, excuse me, serves as both a local corridor and as a critical interregional link for both freight and passenger vehicles, and not only for north and south travel, but it's the link obviously to our state highways to the east and to the west. The reliability and resiliency of this corridor has been compromised by three compounding factors. And one of those is that I-5 operates concurrently with State Route 299 for about 2.5 miles through the Reading urbanized area. And this is exactly where I-5 bottlenecks from 3 to 2 lanes in either direction. Second, there's a large number of entry and exit points over this short span of, or segment of I-5. And there's the geographic design of these entry and exit points aren't optimal for vehicles that are entering and exiting the corridor. And lastly, the more freight truck traffic. You take all of those things combined together, and it's increased the number of collisions that we're experiencing due to merging actions, due to differentials in speeds and lane weaving, because all of these actions are all happening at the same location at the same time with multiple types of vehicles. The last factor is probably the most significant, and that's the fact that climate change has really profoundly impacted the Shasta region in the form of severe weather and wildfire events. So I-5 has proven to be particularly vulnerable. As we've mentioned before, we looked at over the last 5 years, there's been 18 to 23 closures of northbound I-5 each year over the last 5 years. Some of those closures are lasting, 3 or 4 days for some of the major ones, like the wildfires. It's not unusual, for those closures to result in backups of traffic for over 10 miles through multiple interchanges and communities. And especially problematic is that it's blocking the only designated detour route for I-5, which is the 299-89 detour. So given the increasing number and duration of these closure events, the extent of the impacts on mobility and economic activity and goods movement, and the fact that most of these closure events can't be avoided. It's not something you could fix. You just have to respond to it and mitigate it the best you can. And that's our primary objective, is to reduce the impacts of these I-5 closures and to accelerate the recovery once that opens back up again. However, the solution that we're developing also has to address the everyday traffic operations when there are no closures, when everything is status quo, and provide numerous benefits, including traffic operations, equity, public health and safety, and so forth. So we're trying to accomplish a lot of things with the project, not just how to address those exceptional events that require closures. So these lofty objectives have inspired a project that addresses not only the closure events and today's travel needs, but also kind of swings the door open to a range of additional future corridor management strategies that we might be able to use in future years as demand on that corridor increases. Eric's going to talk about now the major components of the project and address how those components address these issues that I've just talked about.
Hello, my name's Eric Gore, and I've worked for Caltrans for 34 years now. And I'm the project manager on this project and also the Razzle project, the Reading to Anderson 6-lane project. And
well done, by the way.
What'd you say?
Well done.
Oh, by the way, I was going to share this. Any day now we'll be officially done with the construction. It's just, you probably noticed there's nothing out there. Some administrative things being done, but we're going to be declaring it officially done from a construction perspective here in a few days. So congratulations. I remember a lot of you were at the groundbreaking ceremony 3 years ago and had your golden shovels out. And finally, we're done with that project. And I remember back in 2017, same problem we have right now. We were looking up for a way to fund the project, and we applied for federal grants and never got them. And then SB1 came along, and we were able to snag, as I say, a TCEP, Trade Corridor Enhancement Program grant. And that made that project possible. SB1 made the Razzle project possible. This next, we're hitting the same thing with Fix 5 Cascade Gateway project. We're applying for federal grants, and at the same time, we're applying again for the TCEP grants. And during that time, between Razzle to having the groundbreaking ceremony, I'm not sure if you know this, it's called CAPTI for short, but it's the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure. And on March 10th, 2021, the California State Transportation Agency, CalSTA, unveiled the draft Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure. The plan details how the state recommends investing billions of discretionary transportation dollars annually to aggressively combat and adapt to climate change while supporting public health, safety, and equity. I think you mentioned that. And so kind of the new rules for obtaining the trade court enhancement funds, we kind of had to adapt our project to make sure that we can get this funding. And so as I explain this, you may be thinking it from a Razzle perspective, but to ensure that we could obtain funding and we still have to apply for the grants, I'm giving you a perspective that we believe in and want to have, but I just wanted to say that's kind of maybe from a different perspective that Razzle had when we applied for funding then. So what we're gonna do the same thing that we had on Razzle, add another lane in each direction. So we have a total of 6 lanes, but these lanes will be subject to adaptive management. And what I mean by that is we're going to be putting up sign structures in the northbound direction, telling trucks and other vehicles where they should be as they travel north. For example, you may have a truck only lane. You may have all the trucks to the side. For example, during those action plans where we heard that the highway's closed, we're going to leave the rightmost lane open for emergency vehicles. We've had situations where all the traffic is just stopped and no one could go anywhere. So with the third lane there, we can use that for emergency vehicles. And also we could use it if there is starting to get congestion, we can have that lane open designated for buses or other types of vehicles in the future, as you were saying. The other thing looking at the CAPTI goals for projects is they would like to see encouragement of zero emission vehicles being used in this corridor. So we're working with the CHP right now to put in some zero emission charging stations at their way station in Cottonwood. Okay, and if that doesn't work out, we're looking at the rest areas down there, Herb Miles rest areas between Red Bluff and Cottonwood, those rest areas, we'd put the chargers there. Maybe even, as it's going to be discussed later today, hydrogen stations. The other thing we are doing out there is, besides just those 1 lane in each direction, so there's 6 lanes, we're going to have auxiliary lanes between 44, 299, and 273. So between 44 and 299, as you're going on I-5, there'll be an auxiliary lane, and that'll help with those detours that we talked about. When I-5 is closed, we will still have that extra capacity to be able to direct traffic towards Highway 89, because that's the way you go now when the highway is closed. So there's basically 4 auxiliary lanes, the 2 between 44 and 299, and the 2 between 273 and Oasis interchange. So those are the 4 auxiliary lanes. The other thing, we talked about partnerships. Dave Moore, our district director, shared about partnerships between Caltrans and SRTA. And this is another example of partnerships where not only with the Fix 5 Cascade Gateway project, where Caltrans has their own project, a SHOP project as we call it, with the SHOP funds, and we're going to combine them together for construction. So not only are we going to see improvements, the same thing, and by the way, happened in Razzle, where we combine SHOP funds with TCEP funds and STIP funds. There's basically 7 funds. It gets pretty crazy. But as a partnership combined for construction, the SHOP funds, the Caltrans portion is going to be fixing the pavement out there, doing median barriers, fixing the signs, doing all the things that Caltrans is responsible for in terms of maintenance and upgrades. And then combining with the Fix 5 Cascade project with the additional lanes and the lane management systems and the ZEV infrastructure. So with that, we're going to be lowering I-5 underneath 273 because right now it's, we don't have clearances for overheight trucks to easily go under that. So we'll be fixing that issue. Also, some other benefits, because we're doing all that at one time, we're not going to have maintenance out there fixing things because when you get everything done, there's less need for maintenance to go out there. And that'll be safer for maintenance forces when they're out there. With the 3 lanes, for example, we can close one of those lanes. We can move traffic into the other lanes, close one of those for maintenance, and they can work on the portion of highway that needs maintenance during the day. Where right now, if we close a lane on I-5, you have to do it at night. And then the good news, if this Fix 5 Cascade Gateway project does go through, it'll eliminate the last 5 miles of bottleneck, and then we'll have 22 miles of 6-lane freeway from Cottonwood all the way out to the city of Shasta Lake. That's good news too. If we do get the funding and we work it out, the SHOP project can be done at the same time, the Fix 5 Cascade Gateway project will happen, then you'll see construction start in March of 2025. So any questions on that?
I just a couple of thoughts. One, have you ever had called governor's office telling me close I-5? I have.
Okay.
I have. And all they think about is the millions of dollars in commerce that we're losing. And then your comment about moving with the lane signs, that's a great idea. But to move the traffic so that the right-hand lane is open for emergency vehicles, you're going to run into a problem there because California law requires you to pull to the right when an emergency vehicle is approaching from behind. And that means fire trucks and police cars. So if they're running down the shoulder, when I've done that as a highway patrol officer for many years, and somebody pulls onto the shoulder because they hear the siren or see the red light and you have a conflict, the state loses.
Yeah, good point. And the whole way that we're managing that is still in its, I would say, semi-infancy, and those questions will be addressed, how we're going to manage it. And that's the one idea I said, we're going to have to work with the CHP and other agencies to make sure that we can manage it.
Adding that extra lane is amazing because you would then, in effect, you could shove those trucks onto the shoulder and then use that adjacent lane for the trucks because they don't want to get off and use the arterial routes that run through the cities. It clogs the city. And we don't want that. But then you leave that fast lane open and or shoulder if we have
For
it.
emergency only.
For emergency
On the left
only.
side.
Right,
And your signage could dictate that.
and not only that, but we're going to be using, and I think we do now, letting trucks know that I-5 is closed so that we won't even get as much truck traffic up here. That's the goal. But as you know, truckers, do what they want to do. And so we're going to have to work with our management system. And it may take a few tweaks to make it work correctly. It'll probably take a lot of maintenance people out there directing people and also CHP to make sure that when we do have those events, that we handle traffic the way we intend.
Oh, yeah, and this is a stellar idea to add that third lane. I think that would be huge at the north end of this town.
The challenge is the adding capacity on the interstate system right now, using the funds that we hope to get is a non-starter. So really, it's a traffic operational necessity in order to do the managed lanes and to maintain that outside lane access to the detour route. And so we're really finding traffic operations and safety-based arguments to add that third lane. And we hope that our funding partners will recognize that and help fund those improvements. Whereas normally if we were approaching them with the typical proposal, it wouldn't even get past the first screening probably.
Yeah, and you could use the shoulders to access your alternate routes with your 3 lanes.
Yeah, and I think if you look at it, a couple different scenarios, and maybe is the easiest way to look at it. During a closure event, your outside number 3 lane would be signed as exit detour only. So you have to keep moving. And so all the trucks and all the local traffic and emergency responders would always have an open lane, and the other ones would be in a holding pattern, waiting for it to open. When it's not a closure event under just normal operating conditions, but say heavy congestion, you could designate the inside number 1 lane as a freight truck only lane. And so that way all the local traffic that's getting on and off the freeway aren't mixing with through traffic, and the trucks aren't constantly going back and forth trying to accommodate all those movements. It does.
That's why we restrict truck traffic to those right-hand lanes, because of the conflict that occurs with automobiles.
Yeah, so we're doing something unique that would require some adjustments for how you would normally operate the corridor. Like, for example, freight trucks aren't allowed to use the fast lane right now, but under this case, they would be allowed to segregate. It doesn't mean that they couldn't use the number 2 and 3 lanes, but more accurately, it means that autos cannot use that inside lane. And then, at some future point in time, it helps when we're selling the project or funding agencies. The managed lanes would, in theory, allow us at some point in the future, if there was heavy congestion, to create a high occupancy vehicle lane or something along that nature. It also includes variable speed limits.
Oh yeah, I didn't mention that. Yeah.
Too, which is an important part of the safety of the project. So when you do have congestion or closures and stuff, you can slow traffic down and avoid some of those conflicts.
I've been pushing to get that section fixed with 3 lanes all the way up Shasta Lake. So I think that's good. And I think your approach is good in that you're using a unique need to go after the money. So I think that's good. But I do have a concern. Anytime you start saying you're going to have high occupancy lane and toll lanes during peak traffic, a red light goes off. I've been in the Bay Area, high occupancy lanes. All they're trying to do is do social engineering. They don't reduce congestion or increase capacity. You see the people that have the fast pass and they're paying the $2 a mile to get through there, and there's still 1 or 2 people in it. So anyway, I would sure hope that would not be coming to this part of the state. And then the second thing is there a way to increase an on-ramp northbound from Hilltop? You really need 1 more on-ramp there, and it would greatly reduce traffic through Reading as it circles around. If you could just have that 1 more on-ramp going northbound from Hilltop. I know it's a short distance to 299, but that would really help people that live out toward Shasta Lake that are in the.
Well, it certainly reduce the conflict that you have there. When you get on from Cypress, you're trying to move over and you got traffic.
Terrible.
Yeah.
What's nice, I'll look into that. That's a good suggestion. At the same time, we're going to have 3 lanes and there's going to be an auxiliary lane there too.
Right.
So there'll be actually.
So it's going to be like 5 lanes for a little bit there.
4.
Yeah.
4.
Right.
Well, and also you don't have to worry about needing to get into through lanes. You can go all the way over, clear, 3/4 of the way to 299 before you really have to merge. So
Right.
You're going to see not as much panic as people are doing right now as they're climbing up towards Hilltop, knowing that all that traffic that's passing is going to come in.
SRTA was a big pusher on getting the other on-ramp coming out of where the old Sears was. What street is that going on?
44.
On 44.
Yeah.
That was a great change for people going into Reading, getting out of there. And going off Hilltop would do the same thing for northbound.
One thing to be sensitive
I have a
to
question.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to make a comment, and thank you for your discussion on this. About 2 or 3 months ago, I was coming back from Red Bluff, and about 10 miles south of Cottonwood. It was basically bumper to bumper. And the right lane, I kept having people and it took me 2 hours to get about 10 miles. They were working on the Cottonwood Bridge, if you recall that activity. But I kept having cars go off the shoulder around on the right-hand side. And that concerns me. What do you do with the kind of traffic that uses that there was no one got in trouble for it, but it was a dangerous situation. As a matter of fact, there was a fatality a few minutes after I heard on the news. It would have been not long after I'd been in that particular area. It was a very dangerous situation on many levels.
Mary, just pull over on your shoulder yourself and go 5 miles an hour. You'll solve it.
It was really the slowest I've ever been on I-5. I mean, it took about 2 hours to get about 10 or 12 miles. And it was why were they working on the Cottonwood Bridge? Was it an emergency in the middle of the day? I think it was a Friday afternoon.
The joint seals were failing and it was emergency work that they had to do. And there's a great example why we need that. There's less traffic out there than in Reading. And when you do close that one lane, because there's only 2 through lanes, especially in this area, you get traffic backing up real quick. And that's another reason why, if we had 3 lanes, we could still close the lane during the day. Workers can see what they're doing out there much easier. There's less types of traffic that may ignore them, if you know what I mean, in the middle of the night. And so it's a great safety aspect for this project.
But like I say, that right-hand shoulder lane, it was kind of an unofficial lane, but people were pulling out and trying to get around the traffic, and it was a hazardous situation on lots of
sometimes you'll have someone that appoints themselves a local constable, and they'll pull into that shoulder halfway to stop all that.
Right.
As a highway patrolman, you actually sit in that traffic and you wait for somebody to drive by you on the shoulder, and Leonard could speak to this. Then you pull them over and write the ticket, and everybody driving by applauds you for writing that person a ticket. And you look at that person and go, "You're lucky I'm here that I stopped you, because that person wants to hang you."
Yeah.
But it happens all the time.
Thank you.
My last comment was on the charging station for freight at the scales.
Yes.
I would hope we don't put in a charging station with the idea that if you build it, they will come. I would like us to make sure there's a demand for it before we just put in a charging station and think the electric trucks are going to come.
The grant applications score us more points if we were putting in charging stations.
Well, go ahead and
Charging station for cars too, though.
We could have cars use it too.
Yeah.
Just like Anderson split pea soup down there.
If the CHP agrees, we could have cars use it too. Matter of fact, we have cars using chargers at rest areas there at Collier, north of Wairika, and at Moonlim Rest Area there near Weaverville. So we could have that situation here. And what's nice of the CHP is people are less likely to do vandalism if it's close to a CHP hopefully, station. And but at this point, even if there's not a need for it, we do see that
get points.
We get points, and also cars can use it at this point. But I do see what you mean, that there's not as much electric trucks traveling at this point, but there is a big push both federally and state to try to get an electric corridor for all trucks to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So this is part of the benefit of doing that it would encourage trucks to.
Just remember, we need 3 more nuclear power plants to charge those trucks.
Last thing I would mention is just to be, as we go throughout this process of planning and submitting grant applications, to just be cognizant of the audience that we're appealing to. And so, you may see, for example, in a grant application that managed lanes will make it possible for us to do high occupancy or toll lanes in the future. Does that mean that we committed to it?
No.
Or that we're necessarily going to do it? No, but it communicates to our funding agencies that we acknowledge and make available those tools, if that's of interest to them, as is with the electric vehicle charging stations. Would those be used frequently at the very beginning? Maybe not, but that's a funding priority. And when we package all of those elements together into a project, it helps us sell it. And so I would just encourage the board to think about the audience, and as we talk about the project, consider it in that light.
Let's just sound forward thinking. That's just perfect. It's absolutely forward thinking that at some point, sometime, we might come to that.
Yeah, and it's really it's a win-win because we get to solve the current day's problems and then have the opportunity if it's needed,
future,
if we want to do it, to do all sorts of different traffic management ideas or even just pilot projects or during certain events or something like that, just to test it out to see if it works.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to move on to item number 17, receive an update on hydrogen fuel cell activities in the Shasta region.
Good afternoon, board members, again. On this item here, we're following up from in April last year. We held a hydrogen fuels transportation workshop where we had presentations from several different members from the industry and private businesses about the future of hydrogen and fuel cells just abroad in the state of California, nationwide, and the potential for our region. And during the meeting, we identified the fact that the Shasta region here is well positioned to take advantage of future hydrogen fuel cell production and maybe even fueling. Part of that is due to the relative reliable and relatively low cost of power, the available land in our cities and county, the location of the region along the I-5 corridor, as well as the region being essentially a gap location between the rest of California, as well as Oregon and Washington for future freight and goods movement and interregional travel needs. And also now, given the recent announcements of federal and state investments planned over the next 5 years, there's potential for high demand. Other activities that have taken place is that in November, when the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act was passed, that act provided $9.5 billion allocated to the U.S. Department of Energy to potentially fund somewhere in the number of 12 to 22 hydrogen hubs across America over the next 5 or more years. Additionally, the U.S. Department of Transportation was allocated $2.5 billion over the next 5 years for alternative fuel corridor vehicle infrastructure investments. And that can include hydrogen fueling stations as well. In recent months, SRTA and as well as Todd Jones with Shasta Economic Development Corporation have stayed in touch on a variety of different projects taking place. And what I wanted to do is allow Todd to come up and present some things about what's happening in the region and what can be shared, as well as then after that provide a snapshot of where we're at and going forward with both SRTA's efforts to be a member of the California Fuel Cell Partnership and also our recent contract with Frontier on the Shasta Regional Hydrogen Hub. So with that, I'm gonna hand this over to Todd first. Thanks, Todd.
All right, thanks, Sean, and thank you, board, for having me here today. I will share my presentation here. Hopefully, you guys all see this here. I think if I blow it up, I might lose some pieces here. So I'm just going to leave it like this so you can all see it. So I'll go really, excuse me, I'll go really quickly through some of this. And then,
yes. Sorry, this is Keith. Is there a way you can put this into presenter view?
Yes, and I think we should.
Great, that's great. Thank you.
You guys see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. I feel like sometimes I'll leave it alone as long as it works. So I'll just go really quickly over a few things. A few months ago, Sean had asked me to kind of give a little bit of an update on Stillwater, but then I'll really focus on some of the hydrogen things that I've been talking with and working on. So just a quick snapshot here of Stillwater itself. It's great to be in front of all of you, all the elected officials throughout the entire county at one time. I usually have to go around and meet you all one-to-one, which is fun, but it's good to catch a representation at one time. So today, actually right now, Pace Engineering, which is right here on parcel 3, they are having their open house. So they're finally there, they're occupied. And then you can see this list here. Moss Energy Works on parcel 5 is going to break ground. Parcel 4, Beneficial and Secretary, they will also be breaking ground this year. And I'm not going to go through all these right now because this is really more about transportation and hydrogen. But these parcels are starting to fill up. Basically, of the 300 acres, 277 acres are spoken for right now, with a few other potential letters of intent coming soon. The Reading Airport, of course, has a lot of growth, which you guys were talking about that with Rob. I was on the call earlier just so I could see what else you guys were talking about today. The Denver flight is not necessarily in the bag yet, but we're very, very optimistic. We'll be meeting with United next month, and we see a lot of growth at the airport. The city of Reading also approved a strategic planning for the airport and the future growth that we're underway with right now. So we'll have a few more meetings, and then I think towards the beginning of the summer, we'll be releasing information on what the growth of the airport looks like and what the opportunities are. And I'm very excited for what's coming at the airport. So just a quick highlight of a few other things I wanted to point out. You guys track this better than probably anybody in the North State with SRTA and Caltrans. But you can see this is a cool slide I saw at the Center for Economic Development's Economic Forecast Conference, which was put on at the end of January through Chico State. An economist named Dr. Eiler presented on kind of what's happening in the North State with recovery due to COVID. Now you'll see on the top of this, although it's very, very modest, 0.3%, we are the only MSA, the Metropolitan Statistical Area, which is where economists look at us, only MSA in the entire state of California that had net new jobs since December 2019 out of every single area in the state. So we are continuing to grow, and we have a lot of opportunities in front of us. And just looking at this, looking through all the trials that we went through over the last 2 years, I'm very excited to live in Shasta County, where we're able to experience this growth due to the leadership by many of you in the room. So I'm very grateful for that. This is a look also just in workforce stuff. This is where I'm more focused on, a little bit less on transportation. This is our recovery and how quick we were able to recover from COVID, from the job losses, employment levels. We were the fastest area in the entire state of California to show recovery after the initial decline from COVID. But the more telling one to this, and again, this is not as relevant to this conversation, but for your elected positions, the blue line here is the Great Recession. So you'll see we never recovered from the Great Recession. We still have about 10,000 fewer people in the workforce now than we did at the peak in 2008. So we're really focusing on workforce and what that's going to look like and how we can fill the jobs that are coming in Shasta County right now. So on hydrogen, since our last conversation in the fall, we've had a few site visits. One of them was in Shasta Lake in November with a company called H2E, which is based out of Virginia. And a lot of these hydrogen companies, the ones that were on the call last fall, Shell and some others, they're obviously very sophisticated. They have a proven technology. They're using a traditional way of buying hydrogen and doing fueling, much like they do now. But some of these new opportunities are coming together with these startup opportunities where, the way that they are getting paid for making hydrogen, they don't have to rely necessarily on how many people are using the fuel. They can also get credits based on how much fuel they're making. And there's a big mix on how this works. And I won't get too deep into, that LCSF market and the economy of how hydrogen works. But that was a good visit. We looked at a piece owned by the McConnell Foundation. We're working through some issues right now to see if that's going to continue to work, but we're continuing that conversation with that gentleman. And then last week, we had Allied Power, who is in escrow for 10 acres currently at Stillwater Business Park, came out, met with Sean and myself on Thursday morning of last week. And they are doing a novel approach to making hydrogen, which has been proven out, although it has not been done to scale. They have a chemical reaction to make hydrogen that's basically using water, bicarbonate, sodium bicarbonate, and aluminum, and it creates a chemical reaction that powers a steam turbine, which creates electricity, and then it creates hydrogen, and the byproduct is actually potable water, which most likely won't just get introduced right back into our drinking water supply, but it will be something that can be discharged, with really no other impacts. So this is kind of the basic way. And again, I won't get into the technology too deeply, But he's working with a lot of other new companies. There's a lot of funding, as Sean pointed out, at the federal and state level for hydrogen. We're seeing, and when the gentleman talked, I didn't catch his name, about hydrogen fueling stations coming. It really is a chicken and the egg. And zero emission vehicles, electric trucks, heavy duty trucks particularly, there is a lot of buzz out there with Rivian and Navistar and Tesla and a few other ones, but the technology just isn't quite there yet. And it's really not quite there all the way for hydrogen. It hasn't come to market quite as strong, but it tends to be that, I'm seeing, now that I'm paying attention more, there's a bigger opportunity for hydrogen heavy duty trucks versus electric, because you can still fill up in about 10 to 15 minutes, and you can get about 400 miles per tank. Some of the tanks have up to 80 kilogram tanks, which you could get up to 800 miles theoretically, but right now it's about 400 miles per tank is what you're seeing. And of course, there's no emissions from that vehicle. And now there's a lot of energy, because the traditional way to make hydrogen was steam methane, which is separating natural gas, or electrolyzers, which is really separating water, which is very energy intensive. But now there's a lot more momentum into green energy and green hydrogen, which this gentleman, Allied Power, this is a green hydrogen method on all the ways that he's going to make this. So I think we will see a bigger adoption. And at the same time, a lot of these companies, we all have a gun to our head, if you will, where you're not going to be able to buy a diesel truck in just a matter of years. And hydrogen may make more sense than electric, but again, it is a chicken and the egg thing. This is what Allied Power is proposing to do, and several companies I've been speaking with have been talking about this as well. They want to see this chain of fueling stations up and down the West Coast. If you look at the map from the California Fuel Cell Partnerships, which I'm very excited that SRTA is a part of now, it's kind of a cluster model. This is just a snapshot of Northern. There's another cluster down in Los Angeles and Long Beach at Fuel in San Diego. There's about 43 stations in California. I think there's only about 48 in the entire United States. There's nothing north right now of Western Sacramento. So as Shell pointed out, and a few other ones last fall, Redding is the next major hub for hydrogen fueling stations. And of course, I'm trying to talk to hydrogen manufacturers as well, because of the things that Sean pointed out with electricity rates. We really do have relative abundant natural resources still to be able to do this. And it makes sense to connect the entire West Coast. Redding is the natural spot. That's the message I share with companies all the time, is that Redding is, equidistant between Seattle and Los Angeles. That makes a lot of sense for logistics, and it's going to make a lot of sense for hydrogen as well. So having SRTA being part of the fuel cell partnership and having me part of those conversations as well, we're really putting together all the pieces, because it is kind of where there's a lot of people talking to different folks. And so me talking to manufacturers, suppliers, even a potential, some potential fleets in the area, and then Sean and the team at SRTA and Dan talking to the fuel cell partnerships and kind of putting all the pieces together. It's really making it, I think in the next year, we're going to see a lot of movement in this, and we're going to put all the pieces together. And I have no doubt that we will see a hydrogen fueling station here. And I think what SRTA can do, and the more I understand about the programs and resources, if there's just a handful of vehicles that use hydrogen, specifically heavy duty, in the Redding area, the demand for a hydrogen station is really immediate. It doesn't take that much for them to pencil out that project. So that's just again, a very quick update on my component of this. There's more hydrogen companies I'm talking to, people that the ones I'm most excited about, they utilize biomass to create hydrogen. And there's a lot of energy at the state and federal level to utilize wood waste in this manner. So I'm really excited about these opportunities. And again, it's all about the ecosystem and putting the pieces together and making sure we're organized so we can take advantage of these opportunities.
Thank you, Todd.
Thanks, Todd. And building on that, I think Todd and I have been, I don't know, I think we're either calling or emailing each other every other day the last 3 weeks with a lot of developments. with announcements at the federal level, a lot of announcements about funding coming down the road has now garnered a lot of interest in the private sector side. As Todd said, SRTA, we've even had some calls with folks asking, well, is your transit agencies looking at hydrogen? What other plans are there? Is Caltrans doing anything? So, we're talking with folks and seeing what they're interested in and sharing with them. A lot of this is kind of in the infancy stage. And as we highlighted in the workshop, this will be a dynamic situation. And to help us along with that, one of the things that we recognized was to get some experts with us to help us, not only SRTA, but just the region move along. So SRTA has entered into a contract with Frontier Energy. Frontier Energy is going to be providing us guidance and also assistance to coordinate with our regional partners to promote a hydrogen and fuel cell economy. Topics that will include, we'll look at manufacturing and distribution, fueling facilities, both potentially stationary and mobile, vehicles, and even emergency response, as well as planning and public works concerns that may play into this for local jurisdictions as well. There's a lot of facets that play into this, and we want to make sure that as a region, and as this is definitely going to be a huge impact in the future, potentially on the transportation sector, especially we see in the freight and goods movement side and interregional travel, as well as local, probably local regional delivery. Your UPSs, your FedEx, your local furniture delivery stores, and those that, especially in our region, deal with cold and hot weather, as well as elevation change and some very rural areas that they go to. Most of the chatter that we hear from folks is that on that freight goods movement side, hydrogen is where a lot of the companies are thinking that's the better route to go, because you get comparable fuel mileage, or even better than traditional gas and diesel. As part of the effort, Frontier is also going to be assisting us with a variety of activities, which are yet to be defined, but it may include regional visioning, identifying strengths, opportunities and barriers for the region, working with folks like Todd at Shasta EDC, Reading Electric Utility, other partners, as well as planning and public works departments, and even emergency response on how to be prepared for a zero emission fleet in the future over the next 10 plus years. They may also assist us in some planning activities and maybe even identify some projects or locations that would benefit the region in terms of future projects, and also connect us with national and state public and private stakeholders. I'll add that in our partnership with them, as well as the California Fuel Cell Partnership, Todd and I have already been plugged into some different folks at the state level. We have a meeting next week with GoBiz, as with some other folks across the state interested in the regional hydrogen hub effort and the federal funding. So that gives us a chance to talk to GoBiz and the governor's office about why this region would be beneficial to the state of California for investment and for consideration how we can help the state move forward together. In terms of the fuel cell partnership, they will assist us also by providing access to subject matter experts, facilitate some connections with various stakeholders across the state and nation, allowing us also to have access to outreach and educational materials, and also to stay up to date. This topic of hydrogen fuel cell is just daily changing. A variety of different things are happening, including such as this morning, I got a news update that Chevron had announced a partnership with Iwatani to build 30 hydrogen fueling stations in California over the next few years. And they plan to do these at Chevron branded retail stations, and they will focus specifically on light duty passenger cars and trucks. But there's just one more effort that shows that things are moving forward in this effort as we move to a zero emission fleet down the road. With that, I only had one bonus item to share with you, following up from our December meeting. We were talking about DC fast chargers in the region. About 2 weeks ago, I heard from Symbiotic Restoration and the Fall River Resource Conservation District. They're interested in providing DC fast chargers in Eastern Shasta County and Western Modoc County. So they're looking at identifying property owners in the areas of Bernie, Fall River, Aden, Old Shasta, and MacArthur, as well as looking to try to take advantage of the California Energy Commission's Rural EV Charging Program. It is a very quick turnaround for the application. If they're not able to do that, they still plan to move forward and looking at opportunities through CalStart's Energize program, PG&E's zero emission vehicles programs, as well as other federal and state funding opportunities. In the last couple of weeks, we've shared some communications with them, as well as technical support on data and contacts who could maybe help them with their project. With that, we'll turn everything over to you folks with any questions.
Sean, this is Mary. Hey, I just wanted to let you know there's a group called the Intermountain Collaborative. It's through Garrett Costello with the Symbiotic Restoration. That's the name of his company. And they asked me to write a letter of support. They're trying to get a grant for a charging station. And I thought you might want to check in with them and just kind of connect with each other so that you're familiar with what they're trying to achieve, that you're not at cross purposes.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I'll double check with it. I think Garrett works also with Kayla and Jill with Symbiotic Restoration.
Yes, that's them.
So they have asked about if they get close enough to submit an application about doing a letter of support. So we plan to do that, whichever program they have that they prepare an application for. But yeah, we'll make sure there's no duplication.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Thank you for the report.
Yep, thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item number 18, suggestions from the board members relative to potential topics for future board of directors meetings.
I'm sorry, Chair, we just had someone raise their hand for public comment, if it so pleases the chair.
Mark, he spoke already. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'm promoting him now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. High tech here. I want to comment first on, I believe his name, Todd presentation. I thought it was very realistic, and he acknowledged the state of affairs today is that the really only holdout for hydrogen and ground transportation is long range trucking, airplanes, locomotives. Now that they're battery electric buses and trucks that travel 300-500 miles, there's just no cost the cost competition just isn't there from hydrogen. It never will be. I want to point out that last year, while about 90% of the world's auto or vehicle production was internal combustion engines, 10% was electric, and a very small fraction of 1%, I don't have that figure, was fuel cells. The United States, we trail the world, of course. We only had about 1% electric vehicle production. However, in both cases, those numbers for battery electric vehicles are doubling about every year. So electric vehicle production will bypass internal combustion engines worldwide, somewhere in the mid-20s, and even in the backward USA, sometime in the late 20s. The real problem, however, with Todd's analysis of long-term transportation is every study that's been done has shown that dynamic charging of electric vehicles is far cheaper than electric fuel cell stations. And there's nothing high-tech about dynamic charging. It's just, we've had electric trains and electric trolleys running for close to a century and a half now. You simply run a wire, or the only advance is now there's inductive charging, so you don't have to actually make wire contact. And you deliver electricity to the vehicle while it travels. This is very expensive per mile of road, so it's only gonna be done in long range interstate freeways, exactly where fuel cells still have some hope of being competitive. So anyway, this idea that Shasta County is going to be part of a electric fuel cell economy, it's just not much of an economy to be had there. You can have a personal belief in the hydrogen economy, or the switchgrass methanol economy, or the unicorn fart economy, and behave in take your own actions appropriately. But I don't think that since there's not going to be any hydrogen transportation, surface transportation in the Shasta region, it really belongs to the discretion of this board to be spending so much time and expense on the subject. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Any other questions? Statements? All right, awesome. Okay, moving on to 18. Is there any suggestion for from the board members on the next agenda? All right, seeing none, we're adjourned.
Yeah.